I mean, Novak Djokovic was on court for Andy Murray's retirement ceremony at Wimbledon. Who knew 4 months later they would be working together? Paul, what was your initial reaction when you heard this news?
I thought it was fake news. Yeah, got to be honest, thought it was fake news. When you look at how much these guys have battled and you look at those astronomical numbers, the thing that I keep coming back to for Novak is he takes a lot of pride and he takes a lot of thoughtfulness about having people that can relate to what he's done in his corner. Agassi, Becker, Murray. There's a lot of Lendl. I mean, not Lendl, but there's a lot of people that he's had around him that have been very familiar with what he's done, even Nizovic, you know, and there's not too many people that have done that. So this is another move in that direction.
And this is why I hired him. Try to get number 25 and try to get past Margaret Court for the all-time major titles leader and first opportunity at the Australian Open, Jason, where he's won 10 times. 4 of those, by the way, in finals over Andy Murray.
Yeah, don't have to remind me about that, Steve. Right? That was a heartbreaker for Andy initially, wasn't it? Very early on in his major career. And I think becoming the golden GOAT earlier this season, winning the gold medal in the Olympics in Paris, meant a huge deal to Novak, because, of course, that separated him from so many more great champions over the years. But he doesn't want any kind of discussion at all as to who is the absolute GOAT. And for that to happen, he's got to get to 25. And I think off the back of his lack of success this season in the majors, wasn't able to win one, then he's had to do something just a little differently. And I think because he's known Andy Murray all the way from when they were juniors, you know, they do have a really good friendship. Novak's cut from a very different cloth. Murray is to a certain extent as well, but they've always got on really well. So I think that's another one of the reasons why perhaps Novak's thought, OK, I'm going to do a little teaming up here. I think the other factor is Andy Murray wanted to spend a little more time at home, but then suddenly realised what life was like with 4 young kids at home, right? And he said, no, this is not for me. And let me get back out onto tour with anybody doing anything. I'm out of here.
Well, Novak's a good spot to go to. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of winning there for Murray. You brought up all the players that Djokovic has brought into his corner and how they can somewhat relate. Obviously, no one on the planet can relate exactly to what Novak has done. But in terms of being from the same generation, they are not. So how does that affect the way the message is both received and the respect level?
You feel like Andy and Novak are not from the same generation?
They are. They are. And the other coaches are not.
Right. No, I think that adds another element of relevance, right? Because there's no revisionist history. They lived through a lot of this stuff together. It's all documented. You know, the biggest challenge really to me, I mean, I don't know if all the movie makers are out there, but you guys should find a way to make this some real life TV to see how these guys interact. I mean, it's an amazing dynamic between player and coach, and there's a lot of things that have to fire. The biggest thing on great players becoming coaches is it's challenging because great players are the exception. They're not the rule. So Andy did things a little differently. You know, Novak does things a little differently. They're probably not the same. The commonality is they're both amazing and they've won a ton. But how does that steel will, that desire to be right and to know more and to be so locked in, how does that integrate with another great player? That's going to be their challenge. They're both very smart. I'm sure they'll be able to figure out how to do it. But for me, it's going to be even more interesting for Andy, because Andy's recently retired, and now this is a totally different scenario. And as we've talked about, Andy's a very complex person and was a complex person to coach. So let's see how he manages the situation.
I think the upside is he's played all these guys, hasn't he, recently? Even not necessarily when he was playing his best tennis or at his peak, but he knows what it's like to face Alcaraz, what it's like to face Sinner. So I think that gives him an advantage when he's talking to Novak, because Novak goes, no, I know you know, so we're on the same page. Let's move forward. But I think the other challenge is that Andy left no stone unturned in terms of what he wanted from his coach. He was really into data. He was into string tensions, into trying different rackets, just trying to get the extra 1% from over here, the extra 1% from over there. And so how much do you then impart on your player as a coach? That's another lesson that you have to learn very, very quickly, isn't it? How much do you give them and how much do you hold back? You don't have a great deal of time. If you're only working through to the end of the Australian Open, it's got to work right now, hasn't it? So that's going to be a huge challenge for Murray as well.
I mean, you're a friend, you're a competitor, Now you're an employee,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
I mean, there's a totally different relationship there. And I'm curious what happens when Novak is chirping at his box, and that's Andy Murray. Because Andy Murray's used to...
He's good at chirping, right? Andy, he's good at chirping.
How does he react?
Maybe Andy will coach him. Say, listen, the way you chirp at the box isn't quite right. Let's work on some of the ways to really get on us when you want to get on us.
It's going to be fascinating.
Isn't it just?
And I think you're right. Let's get a documentary. Let's get some streaming service to make this a live program throughout the offseason and then, of course, through the Australian Open.